Welcome to the first video for Conventure Master tutorial videos. Today we're going to talk about Cashbox control. In order to handle Cashbox control, we're going to go over and log into our Convention Master session as the accountant. So once we've logged in, we can go ahead and click to the accounting menu and click Cashbox Management. This will be where we can create new cash boxes for our events. So we're going to create a new cash box. It'll give it a title. The initial float amount is the amount of money that you're going to put into the cash box to begin with. So let's just say that we stuck $75 in there. We're going to lock a cash box to the individual, and it's going to pick you as the person to lock the cash box to. The Cashbox 1 level is the level at which both the cashiers and the operations room will get warnings that the cash box is too full. And the max cash allowed level is the total amount of cash allowed in the cash box before the cashier will be forced to stop taking transactions and get some money out of their cash box, either through a skim or by changing out cash boxes. This allows us to limit the amount of money that we have sitting in the room that might get lost or stolen. So when we do that, so now created our first cash box. After creating our first cash box, if we want to, we can create many cash boxes. Again, most of the options here are the same, but we have a %n in the cash box name field. So we're going to create 2 cash boxes. Start counting from the number 2. We're going to say $75. We're going to keep the rest of these settings the same. This will create 2 new cash boxes, Cashbox 2 and Cashbox 3. I want to discuss something that I skimmed over there for a little brief period. It wasn't important to begin with because I was just trying to show how we could create some cash boxes. But here we have something called Cashbox locking, and there's 3 options for this. And this is an important concept for you to fully understand. When we create cash boxes, they are going to be locked preferentially to the individual. If we lock a cash box to an individual, that means only that individual can be held responsible and can use that cash box. However, there are some contingencies or some cases where we may want to have a cash box that's used by many people. Like, for example, if we have a con store or a cashier in registration that swaps out a lot between 2, 3, or 4 different floating staffers. If we want to do that, we can lock it to the location. And when we lock to a location, we're actually locking to an IP address. And what this means is that from that IP address, anybody who has a staff account can use that cash box. And it will record transactions based on who's using it. So if we had 2 cashiers, cashier A and cashier B, and for whatever reason they swapped out a lot, maybe one was going around and doing errands, we would lock it to an IP address, and then after having locked it to the IP address, both cashiers at that location could just continuously use that cash box, and it would show the transactions accordingly. The last option is not locked, and I highly recommend you do not use this. This is for very special cases, which we're not going to discuss here. Okay, the next thing on Cashbox control is the ability to add or remove funds. So let's say that we had a cash box that had too much money in it, and we needed to go in, it's hitting that warn level or it's hitting that lock level, and we want to just tell the cashier, let's take $2,000 out of your cash box, and we will record that we've taken that money out of their cash box so that their cash box reflects correct amounts. In this particular example, we only have $75 in their cash box, so I'll remove $5 from their cash box. And I can say skim because count. So it's one thing that's given a reason when we do this. And if I hit save, it'll remove $5 from that cash box. The same thing could happen if we had accidentally recorded a cash sale as a credit card sale, we could actually say negative $10 cash and plus $10 credit, and say cashier accidentally recorded a credit card sale as cash. And then we could hit save and it would measure it accordingly. So now if we go add and remove funds, we can see that we have $10 cash and or $60 cash and $10 credit. The next thing we can do is edit a cash box. All those fields that we were, pretty much all those fields that we had access to the first time, we can edit and hit record. Now that the cash boxes have been created, you can go ahead and start physically making those cash boxes. To do that, we may want to print a label. I'm just going to click over here to workstation assignment and make sure that I have a assigned workstation. And if I go back to cash box management, you'll now see that I have some extra buttons. Now that I've gone ahead and assigned myself a printer pool, we can now print both the summary slip, and the summary sheet looks like this, which basically talks about how much money we have in our cash box. In this particular cash box, remember, we had $60 cash and $10 credit. We can print this slip to associate with the cash box at any time. When we're assembling the cash box, it's nice to be able to have some stickers, and so we can hit print label and my label gets printed. So in that case, I can now put these, here we go, I can put these 3 labels on my envelopes that contain the floats and the cash box information. I've gone ahead and created 3 cash boxes. We've played around with the amount of money that they've had in them, but now it's time to go ahead and give those cash boxes to the registration lead. And this is the guy who's in charge of the registration room. So in the morning, he might come to me and say, I need 6 or 12 cash boxes for my department today, and I will reassign those cash boxes to the cashiers individually. So I will say, okay, I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to take that assignment, and I'm going to look for them either by UID or by name, and I'm going to assign cash box 3, and this time I'll search by name, cash box 2, and cash box 1. Now these cash boxes have been assigned to Simba Lion there. If I click on cash box 1, we can actually see in the history right here, cash box assignment has been changed from myself to Simba. So I'm going to log in as Simba here. And when Simba logs in, he doesn't have all the accounting tools and stuff like that. He's the registration lead, so he has the permissions he needs. Under the cashier assignment, he can see this cash box assignment tool, and he can see that I have attempted to give him these 3 cash boxes. Before he can do anything with them, he needs to accept that he is now in possession of those cash boxes. So we can quickly accept the possession of those, and since he also has a label printer, he can print the slip or can print the label depending on what he wants to do. Now he's accepted those 3 cash boxes, he can actually further reassign those down to the next person. And I will just assign it to, say, Matt Mitchell there. And Matt Mitchell gets cash box 2, and is there a Fred or a Susan? Let's call it Sven Wright. Once those cash boxes have been assigned to somebody else, he no longer gets to see them. He only sees the cash boxes that are currently assigned to him. However, if we switch back over to my account and we look in cash box management, as the treasurer with the accounting permission, I can still see those cash boxes, every one of them, and who they're assigned to. So we still have one assigned to Simba, and we still have, and now we can see that Simba or somebody has reassigned them from Matt or to Matt and Sven. Additionally, Matt and Sven haven't logged in and accepted those cash boxes, so we still see that currently they were last touched by Simba. So until Matt logs in and says, I am using this cash box, it's still going to say that it was owned or last touched by Simba. And we can look in here and we can see here, I changed the ownership to Simba, then the possession was changed, so now Simba has it, and then now Simba has assigned it to Matt. Alright, so now let's see what Matt sees. Matt is the cashier, the individual cashier that has been assigned the cash box. So we'll log in as Matt, and he logs in and he has even fewer permissions, but he can go to his cash register and he can start cashing customers out. He'll get this prompt, are you using the cash box named Cashbox2? And his choice is yes or no. If he clicks no, he's going to say, you have to use a cash box, so are you using it? He can say yes. Once he says yes, he has now been taken possession of that cash box. And we can see that if we reload the page over here, we can see now Matt is the last person who touched Cashbox 2. As a quick side note, if Matt has been assigned more than one cash box, when he clicks cash register, if more than one is available to him, he can choose whichever one he's actually using. This would be seen if Matt was assigned a cash box directly and that particular workstation he was using was assigned a cash box by IP address, or if for any reason he was assigned more than one cash box. In our example, Simba, at the time he had 3 cash boxes, would have been able to choose any one of them. Matt should be trained that if he sees this, he needs to make sure he picks the cash box that he is correctly using and verifies that with either looking at the float envelope or some other mechanism. He can then click continue. He's going to add customer 242, or we'll just handle this guy. So we're going to finalize sale, and he's going to take $55 in cash, and there goes that customer's badge printing. So Matt's going to continue to cash out a few different people so that we can see, so we'll say $24 in cash first, then we'll say $31 in cash. There we go. So Matt has now successfully cashed out a couple of people. And if we look at Matt's cash box and we look at the history of his cash box, we start seeing the individual payments that Matt has been recording in his cash box. We can even click on the payment number and see that exact payment. So cash box control is important because it tells us a history of everything that happened in Matt's session. And we can now also see that Matt's cash box should have $185 in it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what happens when Matt is done his session for the day. So Matt has a cash box tools option, and he can use the print status button to print that same summary page that we have talked about before here. So he can print this page, and it'll print either on a receipt printer or on a full page printer depending on what Matt has available to him, and he can then put that in his cash box. This also allows him to count the amount of cash or checks or credit that he might have, and he can verify that his cash box is either correctly counted or that maybe he made a mistake, and he can perhaps fill in some notes. And that's an interesting point, because if Matt was in the cash register and he just finished a transaction, he should be taught that if you messed something up, just as soon as you are able to, go over to the cash box tools and make a note of that. And he should be able to say, hey, I just recorded a $31 cash sale, but in actuality, it was a check. And he can just add that as a note, and it'll say note added. So if we were to now look in his cash box, we can see that he said that. And when we go back to reconciling the cash box, that will become important. He needs to close out his cash box. This is not the same as the treasurer closing a cash box, which we will get to in a few minutes. This is called cashier closeout. And really all he's doing is reassigning the cash box back to the person who created the cash box in the first place, which means that it's going to be reassigned to somebody in the accounting department. If he clicks cashier closeout, he'll get this screen, and he'll be told to first print the status using the print status tool, put all of his cash, checks, credit, etc. into the envelope, and make sure he writes cash box 2 on the outside. Once he does that, he simply clicks close out. It says here the cash box is no longer assigned to him, which is in fact true. If we switch over here and refresh, we can see now cash box 2 has been assigned back to myself. So that means that he can then deposit that cash box into our room safe or give it over to the department lead. Either way, Matt is finished with that cash box and he's out of the story now. That cash box should then make its way back to the Treasury Department, however method you guys want to do that. So at that point, the Treasury Department is going to go ahead and open up his cash box to count it and make sure that Matt's cash box was correct. Here we use the close tool. So now we can actually open up the cash box, and here we have a tool that lets us put in the number of currencies. So I can say, okay, I have 2 $50 bills, and I have 3 $20 bills, 2 $10 bills, and a 5. And now we can see that we have $185 in cash. We had $0 in PayPal. He didn't comp anybody. He didn't accept any checks. He didn't accept any credit. Except for, oh, maybe we see that there is indeed a check in his cash box. So we can say, well, he says it's supposed to be $185 cash, but there's a check there. I wonder why. So we can click cash box 2. Oh, I see. He just recorded a $31 cash sale, but in fact it was a check. Okay, well there's two ways we can fix this. We can just count that out as cash and be done with it, or we can convert this cash, this $31 cash, to a check. The way that we do that would be simply to say, I'm going to modify the funds. We're going to say minus $31 in cash and plus $31 in check, and click save. Oh, we need to know why. Cashier made a mistake when recording. And we can click save. So now, when we choose close, we can actually see, oh, it's $154 cash and $31 check. So we can say we have those two 20s, and we can say we have two 20s here, and let's say a 10 and $4. So then we can say, okay, $0 PayPal, $0 comped, there's the $31 check, there's a credit, and we can say witnessed by Tank and Simba. So maybe Simba was there counting cash with me. We can hit close cash box. At this point, that cash box will be closed, and we can move that money into our cash on hand account and be done with it. We can always reprint a slip and a label for it, and we can look at the summary and verify in the future that this had $154 in cash and $31 in checks. So that pretty much completes our tour of the cash box management system. The last thing that we could do is, if we needed to for any reason, we could reopen that cash box and then recount it and do any of those features we wanted as well. All right. Thank you very much, and hope that you fully understand the cash box control system in Convention Master. Have a nice day.